morning. My name is Reverend Krista Taves, Eliot's Minister of Congregational Life. It is my great pleasure to welcome all of you to our worship this morning and to celebrate this is our last outdoor service before we move indoors next Sunday. If you want to come, you have to register, okay? You absolutely have to register, so make sure that you do that, especially because it is our special bread service. So I want to welcome all of you as well, those of you who are here at our outdoor service and those of you who are watching from home. We are here together, united as one community, more together than apart. A few reminders for those of us who are here in person. Masks must be worn at all times and properly, over the nose and under the chin. And if your mask isn't fitting properly or you don't have a mask, we always have extra masks, both for adults and children. And that's going to continue even when we move indoors. You also must check in so that we know who is here in case we need to do contact tracing at a later time. And there are restroom facilities right here behind me through these doors and through Adams Hall and towards the sanctuary. Also, we want to make sure that we thank everyone who has been a part of setting up our outdoor services and taking them down. So if you've been part of our setup team or takedown team, please stand so we can give you a round of applause. Thank you so much for your undying service. And that we got to do this every single week. We didn't have to cancel once, which is pretty amazing. We've gone from it being super hot to threatening rain to like super cold like it is today. And I can only guess who you are because you're all bundled up. So glad that you're here. Oh, and we got to thank Ken, who has done the sound. Thank you, Ken. And of course, all the staff who put untold hours into making these services happen. So if you're visiting for the first time, a special welcome to you. We're so glad that you chose to be here this morning. I hope that you feel warmly welcomed and that today's service speaks to you and that we will see you again. If you're here in person, make sure you got one of those guest cards that we pass out at the entrance to the sanctuary. You can fill that out or put it in the offertory basket. And if you're at home and visiting, drop us a line at welcome@eliotchapel.org so that we'll know that you're here and we can also welcome you that way. This is a liberal religious community of spiritual seekers. We welcome all of you in the fullness of your age, race, ethnicity, gender expression, sexual orientation, and religious background. Our faith is not lived in creeds, but in deeds, not in the hereafter, but in the here and now. Our core values are freedom, reason, respect, and love. In Unitarian Universalism, we light a chalice to symbolize that we have entered sacred space. Our chalice lighting words are by Reverend Karen G. Johnson. As we gather this morning, let us be a people of not forgetting. Let us practice including collective memories that might otherwise slip into that enormous void that sucks at and erodes any future we hold dear. Let us practice honoring truth-telling up from the past that must come fully into the now, lest we falter and fail, lest the whole world remain in pieces. Let not our need for comfort or simplicity, for easy forgiveness or false pardon, smother the heartbreak that still needs healing. Let us practice resilience with reckoning. Let us marry memory and promise. Let us dance in the tension we find there, and let us rest in the integrity we cultivate there, and let us be partners with the possibility that emerges. It is good that we gather. Please rise for our opening hymn, Gather the Spirit.
Spirit of the power Good morning. My name is Terry Jones, and I serve as the chair of the Environmental Justice team and on the steering committee for social justice and action. I invite you to join me in reading our congregational covenant. As a free congregation, we promise to one another our mutual trust and support. To create beloved community, we promise to be kinder to each other than we have to be, to listen fully to each other with an open mind and heart, to speak responsibly and respectfully, to find ways to improve our church for all members and friends.
Our story this morning is going to be a little unusual. We need a little participation. Would I have 3 people? It'd be lovely if it was children. You all look so comfortable, but 3 people who might be willing to come and sit up here for our story. Look at that, here they come. Woohoo! Bring them on down.
Party one.
Okay. Now, yay! Each have a seat?
Barbara, we have one more?
2 more. Okay, oh please, come on down. We have more chairs. We have more chairs. We need more birds. You're all going to be birds in our story. No? No? All right. All right. We had our chance. I guess we blew it. Thank you for coming up, you guys. Okay, this is a story from ancient India, from the Jataka region, and it is called The Flock of Birds. Once, in an ancient time, there was a flock of birds. You see them here. They were innocent birds. They had a good time. They had no predators and no fear and no danger. They were happy and they laughed and they ate and they were living in peace and harmony and joy. One day, some hunters came to where they were, and they had nets that they cast over the birds. A net. And the birds didn't know anything about the net, so when it was lowered over the top of them, they were captured, and they were the hunters' dinner. Bum, bum, bum. On the second day, let's lift up the net. On the second day, the birds got a little smarter. They knew about the nets. They knew they were coming. And on the second day, when the hunters came and they lowered their nets, the birds decided, you can lower it down, birds decided that they were going to fight it. They were going to punch the net. They were going to punch the net and yell and fight it and scream and make all kinds of noise and fight it. But you know what? The hunters just laughed. What's for dinner, Reverend Krista? I think birds, maybe. And that was the end. Oh. So, that is the first part of our story. Our birds can go sit in your chairs again. Thank you, birds. But it's not the end of the story altogether, and we'll hear the end at the end of the sermon. Thank you, birds.
Today's prayer was developed from the original by Reverend Lynn Cox. Let us join together in a time of reflection and meditation. Spirit of life, who draws us together in a web of holy relationships, Make your presence known with us and in us and among us. This week, we honored our veterans, those who have served this country. This morning, in this religious community committed to diversity and inclusion and the ongoing recognition that we are a nation of immigrants, let us honor all veterans in this nation, those who have served this country and those who have served their mother countries when asked. Let us honor the conscientious objectors, the families who sent their young people away, and everyone who has been touched by war. Let us have a moment of silence to honor this cloud of witnesses. Spirit of life, remind us that we are not alone in history. Ignite us with the courage of this living tradition. Remind us that we are not alone in entering the future. Anchor us with patience and perseverance. Remind us that we are not alone in times of grief and pain. Comfort us with your Spirit, manifest in human hands and voices. Remind us that we are not alone in joy and wonder. Inspire us to honor and extend the beauty that we find in this world. Let us enter into a time of silence for the prayers and meditations of our hearts. May we move with the rhythms of peace. May we move with the rhythms of compassion. May we move with the rhythms of truth and wisdom. May we move with the rhythms of justice and solidarity. So be it. Blessed be. Amen. Every week we give away half of our offering to an organization in the community that reflects our core values of justice, equity, and compassion. This month, our offertory is dedicated to the Southside Early Childhood Education, which was founded by Unitarian women over 100 years ago, when they grew concerned about the well-being of working mothers who needed childcare. They opened their homes and hired babysitters and teachers. And since then, Southside has grown into its own organization, a flagship education center, offering affordable, accessible early childhood education and a wide variety of services to a wide diversity of families. Let us be a generous people. If you're watching from home, you can contribute to the offertory by texting Eliot Shared Plate, which is one word, and the amount you wish to give to 73256. We will now take this morning's offering.
Tell a story, let it echo far and wide, make them hear you, make them hear you. When justice was a battle and how justice was denied, make them hear you, make them hear you. Say to those who blame us for the way we chose to fight, that sometimes there are battles that are more than black or white. And I could not put down my sword when justice was my right. Make them hear you. Make them tell the story to your daughters and your sons. Make them hear you. Make them hear you. And tell them in a struggle we would
of gratitude for the generosity among us. Let this offering be a blessing to the community. Thank you.
Well, I will tell you what we need. We need to know, we need to really know, deep down believe that we are good. We are not perfect. We make mistakes, we can do harm, sometimes tremendous harm. But we are worthy of love. We belong to the universe. This tribe of human beings and this goodness is never in question. It's never up for grabs. And if we can really, really know that, then we can hear anything and deal with it. If you really know this, no one needs to protect you from the truth. Think of this, my friends, and hold on tight. We don't have to be perfect in order to be good. And there are days. Last spring, I received a private Facebook message. It was from my father's second cousin, a woman named Jan Morrison. Our extended family is pretty spread out. I didn't even know she existed. And Cousin Jan, as it turns out, had been doing extensive genealogy work on our family for years. And she was excited to share it with another part of the family. I was excited to see it. There were pictures and programs and official documents that were coming over the wires all at once. My family history just sort of whooshing at me all at the same time. And there was one document in particular. It was a digital image of my father's Army registration card from World War II. The sepia color, the black fountain ink, crossouts, stamped numbers, all of it was crisp and vivid. It was as if I was looking at the real thing. I could see my dad as a skinny young man awkwardly waiting his turn in line at the enlistment office. I recognized his signature at the bottom. And then I saw something on the upper left corner, handwritten in red. Dishonorably discharged, April 5th, 1944. What was this? What was this? It didn't make any sense. For as long as I could remember, my father had talked about World War II and how it changed his life, changed our lives forever. He went to college on the GI Bill. He got veterans insurance, I believe, and a low-interest mortgage for my parents' first home. There would have been no benefits with a dishonorable discharge, right? At the very least, my military friends tell me he could have been court-martialed and even jailed. And this would be a mark that would stay with him forever, except that we had never heard about it. What was this? My father and my mother both had passed long ago, as well as everyone else that we could ask. And I was left with this feeling. I was looking at this image and I felt my heart race and my cheeks flush, my breath become shallow. And later I realized that what I was feeling was shame. I wrote to the National Armed Forces Archive to see if there was more information. They were closed because of the pandemic, and I was left with this feeling of shame. Now, we know three things about shame, according to Brené Brown. First, that it is a universal experience. Everyone feels shame. There's nobody that doesn't. It's primal, it's basic to all human beings. It's something that we feel in our bodies before we have any words for it. Like the birds in the story this morning, shame feels like a net that traps us. Second, we know about shame. We know that nobody wants to talk about shame. Feelings of shame are so contagious that people will avoid even hearing about someone else's shame to avoid activating their own. And third, we know that shame increases when it is suppressed. It grows in power over us if we deny it. It can blot out feelings of worthiness, our sense of belonging, or being loved. And we will do anything and everything to avoid talking about, feeling, or knowing about shame. The problem is shame does not care. Shame will wait patiently for you, like a good hunter who likes it best when you really don't think that he exists. What else can you do with it? Well, you can fight shame. That's what happened in the second day with our flock of birds. They fought and they yelled and they punched, but they were not free. And this is what is happening. This is what's happening. I am convinced of it. In school board meetings all over the country, this ferocious argument, this fight happening seemingly everywhere about curriculum, about the telling of American history, our story, the full story, including our most shameful aspects concerning race. The generic name for it is critical race theory. Although what you have heard about critical race theory, there's a lot of things that it's not, but what it translates to in our schools is a kind of truth-telling about our history. And it might not be hard to hear this truth, except when it connects what happened in the past to what is happening now. When it connects what happened in the past to our story of origin and who we are as a people and what we need to do. Any good historian will connect the past to the present, right? Shakespeare said the past is prologue, what's past sets the stage to the story to come. James Faulkner said the past is never dead. It's not even past. We know this, except when it comes to race, and we don't want to know it. We don't want to know that the same system that produced caterrollers or slave catchers has a direct link to policing today that views black bodies as suspect and dangerous and will use violence. We don't want to know that the Jim Crow laws that kept black and white neighborhoods separate and white neighborhoods wealthy are still in place, but in different forms. We don't want to know that. And we know and we don't want to know that racism is not just a few people acting on personal prejudice. If it were, it would not be nearly so powerful. Instead, it is a system, laws and policies that, whether we realize it or not, puts control in the hands of white people. That's what people are talking about in schools when they talk about critical race theory. And there are bans being proposed all over the country to stop it. Patricia J. Williams writes in The Nation, most anti-critical race theory laws bar, quote, mandatory gender or sexual diversity training and discussion of controversial topics like diversity and inclusion. Nearly all versions of these bans prohibit teaching in which, quote, any individual should feel discomfort, guilt, anguish, or any other form of psychological distress on account of his or her race or sex. And that might not sound so bad, that last part anyway. Why would we want anyone to feel distress about their race, except that any honest conversation about race is going to produce distress. And we need to be equipped for that. Children understandably are not well equipped to process this information by themselves on their own. And on hearing it, white children might feel shame for being white. That's not surprising. However, unlike other distressing or heartbreaking revelations of childhood, Many of their parents and teachers are not equipped to help them through it because they never learned how to do it themselves. When parents see their children's emotional distress, they want to make it stop, and so they fight. One way is to discredit the information, distrust the source, find a plausible explanation for why it couldn't be. All the signs of a nervous heart, I say, terrified of the truth. In coping with my own distress about seeing my father's Army registration card, I created ways to explain it away. Perhaps the note was a prank. My father and grandfather, I will tell you, had a very weird sense of humor. I really could see one of them writing this in on the card, thinking it was pretty hilarious. Anything was possible. Anything was possible, and anything sounded better than the truth. The psychologist Alice Miller writes, there is a deep desire within the human psyche to idealize our parents, our past, and our world. When that is threatened, when that ideal is threatened or shattered, we can't cope. We feel shame. We bring it all our forces to avoid it. And we see this playing out, I think, in places like the Rockwood School Board meetings. Rockwood has been in the news for the vicious statements by parents at their school board meetings. I saw a highlight of one of those meetings produced by KSDK and made available on the internet. It was hard to watch. There have been death threats to superintendents and school board members. This is an organized effort by a group called Concerned Parents. And there are concerned parent groups popping up all over the place. We're starting to see laws being proposed all over the country, banning the teaching of honest history. It is becoming a wedge issue in states like Virginia, where conservative politicians want to regain power. So deeply discouraging to see this. But it's not the end of the story. There is another way. As Alice Miller also wrote, our best weapon in the struggle to be free is to face the truth. My colleague Ellen Taylor writes, coming to terms with shame requires sitting time and again in the fire of truth. This week, I wrote to a website called History Hub, which helps people find military history in their families. And a researcher, a nice man named Eliot, promptly wrote back with some general information about my father, and then he included the same digital image of his Army registration card that I saw before. And it happened again. I felt the same thing. I felt my heart race, my cheeks flush. I felt my breath becoming shallow. And I felt all those things in my body before I even realized what was happening, before I knew the reason. And then I figured it out. If that researcher accessed the card, then I don't think it could have been from my family records. And it could not have been the work of some prankster in my family, but this was from a government office. An official, in all likelihood, had written the note about the dishonorable discharge. Something really did happen. I don't know what yet, and there are plenty of questions left, but what I learned this week was hard. This was not a joke. This was true. And I tell you this story not as a confession, but a testimony. A testimony. I want to tell you that I'm okay. I'm okay. Whatever else I might learn about this, I will be okay. My basic goodness, my sense of belonging, my worthiness of love is not up for grabs here. Nor is that of my family, nor is that even of my father. It can all be true. and our goodness is still not up for grabs. We need not be perfect in order to be good. But we can't get to this place of being able to hear the truth just on our own. I think we need help. We need love. We need a church that preaches the everlasting love of God as ours does from our Universalist tradition. All can be redeemed. We need whole communities that believe their goodness is unshakable and that they are flawed and that they are strong enough to face the truth. And when we do, when we can hear the truth and speak the truth and be okay, when all of that occurs, we will make change. If you are with us in person this morning, you received a postcard when you came in, I believe. This is part of an effort that Eliot Chapel is now starting to respond to concerned parents at school board meetings and to support the Rockwood School District, who is standing firm in teaching the truth. We are part of this group of people who are organizing to attend those school board meetings and to learn how to support teaching the truth and to speak out together. My friends, I see a day in which we create a space for everyone to know so completely that we are good, we are loved, that we can hear this truth, speak the truth, and help to heal our common wounds. So this brings us to part 3 of our story, the third day of the story of the flock of birds. So we're going to go down. I'm going to ask our helpers to come back down and help us tell the rest of the story. Yeah, we got the birds. And in addition to the helpers on the story, there's a lot of handles on this. I'm going to ask for several more of you to come. There are 12 handles all together. And I know you look super comfortable, but I need a few more people. And so on the last day, there were more people, there were more birds that came. And they knew about the hunters. And they knew that the birds fighting did not do a whole lot of good. The net was just simply too strong. And it came down. It came down on over the birds. Once again, oh, there might be another couple helpers coming up here. But this time the birds got a little bit smart. And they decided to work together. And so when I say 1, 2, 3, I want all of you to lift the net and let it go. We'll see what happens. 1, 2, 3. And so it happened that on the third day, the birds acted as one, and they were free. The end. Yay. Friends, if you are discouraged by what you're seeing around you, the fighting and the yelling, I want you to remember this story, this image of the lifting net and the birds that were free. And I ask you to come to church and work with us to make that so. Amen.
Would you please stand and body your spirit for our closing hymn, Answering the Call of Love. Is blessed and made whole. His heart's beat is one, emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim, we are answering the call of love. We are answering the
Now may the love which overcomes all differences, which heals all wounds, which puts to flight all fears, which reconciles all who are separated, be in us and among us, now and always. Amen. Go in peace. Everyone, you can do that. Could we get I would like to get a group picture if you're so willing. We have to have